This is a time of year too, not only to tie flies for what we need for our immediate use, lots of midges. You can never have too many midges, as we discussed, and obviously we've tied a few midges, but also it's a great time of year to think about the future and the spring months, what lies ahead. We're going to start, preparing for some Baetis hatches as we move along, and even some of those other flies that we just need to backstock during the height of the season when we're fishing more and guiding more and don't have the time to actually tie flies. But as we start to progress into the spring season, it's time to think about Baetis. And I got a couple different flies that we're going to demonstrate here, but we're going to tie a Mercury Pheasant Tail, which is one of my favorite flies. I begin by clamping a Tiemco 101 into my vise here, and once again using the extra small silver lined glass bead. Typically, this is a Mercury flashback pheasant tail. Again, just adds a little dash of flash with a piece of mylar tinsel for the wing pad, but typically I tie this in sizes 16 right down to a 24. In bigger sizes, obviously we can imitate our PMDs, and as we progress down to smaller sizes in a 24, then we can imitate the small Baetis, the tiny blue-wing olive that comes off in September and October. And believe it or not, you can even imitate like yellow Sally nymphs if you just alter the color of the pheasant tail fibers as well. So we're tying this in yellow, we're tying it in purple, we're tying it in natural. This evening I'm going to tie it in natural because it's the size or the color that I use most often. And typically size 18 is my overall favorite as far as size is concerned. So I'm going to take 4 fibers for the tail. And a long time ago, I had a friend of mine teach me how to tie a pheasant tail. And the most important thing was to keep it very thin and very sparse. So using a little bit of material is probably the biggest tip that I can offer you on this fly. We're going to take 4 strands of pheasant tail fibers. We're going to take 2 material locking wraps there. If you put too much pressure on it, then the tail is going to flare out. So I'm going to take those 4 fibers, tie them in with 2 wraps, and I'm going to come back with a piece of thin gold wire. And we're going to lay that wire across the shank at a 45-degree angle. Take 2 material locking wraps right at the base of the tail. Pull the pheasant tail material out of the way, and then grab that last piece of wire and advance that thread forward. Now we're going to take the 4 fibers, and we're going to make our first turn right in front of the tie-in point on the tail. And then we're going to advance those fibers forward, keeping a very thin and a very sparse abdomen. If you take a look at a Baetis nymph, they're very streamlined, they're very thin, they're very sparse, and bulky imitations don't fish nearly as well as very thin and very sparse. So we're going to take this gold wire and we're going to reverse rib this. This is going to add a hint of segmentation, but most importantly, it's going to create durability in a material that's very, very easy to tear. One brown trout eats this, and without any rib, it's going to just fall apart. So a little bit of wire makes this fly literally bomb-proof. Now we're going to take these 4 fibers here, and we're going to put 2 fibers on either side, and those will be used for our legs. The next thing is to add a little bit of mylar tinsel. Tie-in point is going to be directly behind the bead, and we'll advance that back to about the 50% point on the hook shank. I like to check that because if you pull that wing pad forward, sometimes it'll creep on you. So I like to make sure that I'm right at that 50% point on the hook shank. With regard to the thorax, we're going to use a piece of peacock herl. I tend to prefer using the herl from the eyes. And once again, I'm going to tie it in tip first because the tip is so much more supple and just gives me a really nice full thorax. I tend to go a little bit overboard on the thoraxes on these because peacock will shrink when it gets wet. But I'll typically take 7 or 8 wraps forward there. And I'll take 2 material locking wraps to tie that into place. I'm going to pull the mylar tinsel over the top. Take a couple material locking wraps. Come in and snip off the mylar tinsel. And then rather than getting it carried away with a lot of excessive wrap of the thread, I'm just going to whip finish, create a nice small collar right behind the Mercury bead. So again, the color variations on this are I typically tie them in black, I tie them in red, I tie them in purple, I tie them in kind of a yellowish color, an olive color. So again, it's a very versatile fly, depending upon the size and the color, can imitate a wide range of aquatic insects.